I'm James Barfield, and this is your Urban Connection. And remember, this is the program that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. Okay, and before we get started this morning, I want you to remember to hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000. We're very, very close. And I think some of you people feel that if you subscribe, there's going to be a fee involved. There is no such thing. You're subscribing so that you will be notified anytime we release a new educational or informational program here at Your Urban Connection. So you're not going to receive any money requests. You're not going to receive any email. We don't even ask for your email address. You simply are subscribing so that you can be notified. You don't miss any of these educational or these programs. And I want you to subscribe, folks. We're very, very close to that 1,000 mark, okay? All right, now, this morning, I have a very, very special guest. She is a Wichita native, and I tell you, it gives me no greater pleasure than to introduce you to Dr. Kaye Morgan. Welcome to the program, Ms. Morgan, or Kaye.
Good to see you, Mr. Barfield. Thanks so much for having me this morning.
My pleasure. Okay, what I'd like for you to do is, you are, as I stated, a Wichita native. You've been here all of your life.
Yes.
And I want you to start, because a lot of people don't really know who you are outside your circle. So what I'd like for you to do is to start off and give us a little bit of an update from, let's say, when you started your work at Wichita State, because you were there for 30 years. So kind of start at the beginning and just bring us up to date, and then we'll talk about your recent promotion.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to do so. Thanks for the opportunity. As you said, I'm a native Wichitan. My history with Wichita State started right after high school graduation, where I matriculated there as an undergraduate student, first generation college student, very fortunate to get to earn a scholarship that afforded me the opportunity to fully engage in campus life. And as a result, when I graduated with a degree in chemistry and business. And what I did not know as a first generation college student is how to get a job with a degree in chemistry and business, which is hard to believe in 2023. I could be a multimillionaire by now. But what I knew how to do was go to school. And so I re-enrolled. I was working in the residence halls. Fairmont Towers, some of your listeners might remember Fairmont Towers. It used to be located at the corner of 21st and Hillside.
Yes.
I was a residence hall director there, and that was kind of the beginning of me falling in love with working with students. I had no idea that was something that was of interest to me. I just kind of fell into that work. When you're a minoritized student on a campus that is predominantly white, when you are visible and leading, then they ask you to mentor other students and that type of thing. And that's kind of how I got into student affairs. And that turned into a 30-year career at Wichita State, where I held, I think it's 9 different jobs, 11 different offices, or 11 jobs, 9 offices, doing any number of things, from recruiting students, community college students to come to Wichita State. I ran an AmeriCorps program at one point through our Hugo Wall School of Urban Affairs. My biggest and most, where I felt like I had the greatest impact, is I was an Upward Bound director. Many of your listeners might be Upward Bound alumni or folks who've been involved with TRIO programs. I had an opportunity to work with Delpha Colvin and a cadre of professionals that she works with. And our primary responsibility there was to work with first generation limited income students who had the gift, the ability to be successful in college, but didn't necessarily know the path. And so for 20 years, I spent time working with young people from Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, who are gifted in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and getting them into post-secondary institutions all over the country. And so folks often ask, what type of legacy do you want to live or leave? I feel like I did that. And I've got 584 Upward Bound math science babies out there doing fantastic things in the world. So that was the largest part of my portfolio. I left Upward Bound in 2017 and moved over to the dean's office over in liberal arts and sciences at Wichita State, working with Dr. Ron Mattson. Some folks may know him in your circle. I was there for only about 9 months before I was promoted to go and serve as an assistant vice president, then working under what was then Provost Muma, and ultimately ended up under Jay Golden being asked to serve as the vice president for strategic planning, engagement and planning. And so that my last role there included a portfolio of 7 different externally reporting units, all involved in community engagement in some sort of way. 7 units, $23 million worth of money coming through in the university and going back out into the community through those centers. And it was fantastic work. I turned 50. My youngest kid graduated from college. I finished a doctorate degree, and it felt like a good time to pause and say, what do I want to be when I grow up? And as a result of that, I've been working with the Kansas Leadership Center on their faculty for several years. Was well connected with some of the work that they were doing, particularly as they worked with higher ed institutions. And I had a conversation with Ed O'Malley, who invited me to dream about what a second act might look like working with Kansas Leadership Center. And did that and took a really big jump in April of last year to start Life 2.0. And then 10 months later, I'm now the president and CEO of such organization. And I am excited about the opportunity to work with the professionals that I get a chance to serve with every day, and to serve our community, both here in Wichita, the state of Kansas, and even beyond. And so excited to share a little bit about that with you and your listeners today.
Okay, fine. Now, I have a couple of questions I want to ask you. You know, you said once you turned 50, you decided to ask yourself, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, after having served 30 years at Wichita State, did you find it hard to break away from that?
You know, no, because I was ready.
Okay.
I was ready. It was clear to me that I had done, I left it all on the table. I did everything I'd been asked to do by any administrator for a 30-year time span. Frankly, some of my upper bound kids would come back and say, Ms. Morgan, why are you still here? It's time for you to do something different. And I was like, because I love it. And I want to make sure you all graduate, and I need to protect, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. And when a 30-year-old comes and tells you it's time, yeah, I had to give some consideration to that and thought, you know, I've done really well in this system. And some of it, Mr. Barfield, was an opportunity to test, am I as good as I think I am? Can I do this in a different system? And so that was kind of the impetus. I still feel a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out when big announcements are made from the university. I'm a 3-time graduate. My husband's a graduate. My children are graduates. So we are shockers through and through. And I can love them from Douglas.
Okay. Now, so I want to ask you this. At the time you started work for Kansas Leadership Center, did you have any inkling at that time that this is where your future was going to take you on a full-time basis?
Yeah, when I first started on their faculty, not at all. Frankly, it was an opportunity to get to build a skill set that I wanted to be able to facilitate conversations. I built a small little LLC where I could go out and make a little extra shoe money or buy a new sofa if I wanted to, that might not have been in budget. And so that was my real impetus initially at going over to KLC. When I moved over in a hired position, Ed was very open that he felt like KLC was at a point where it was time to elevate and do some things that they had not historically done. And he made 3 really bold hires. I was one of those 3. But even at that time, I had no idea that I'd end up in this particular role, just that he had a vision where he needed different talent in order to bring that to fruition. Well,
you know, one of the things that really stood out to me was, and of course I was not aware of this in the beginning, I just found this out since you and I first started talking, but you were appointed to that position after a nationwide search. That's fascinating. I mean, that says a lot about how they felt about you.
Yeah,
So,
it was a really interesting process. Having watched many searches, including those at the highest level of higher ed, KLC had a national search firm that came in. I know at the beginning, somebody said there were 70 applications. That was the last part I actually heard about what the search was. My teammates did a really good job of keeping things very confidential. So it feels good to know that there was a vetting process and that I was the strongest candidate in that pool.
Says an awful lot about you. You must have impressed somebody somewhere along the way.
I hope so.
Okay, so now let's move forward. You were appointed to this position, what, about 3 weeks? It's been about 3 weeks now?
Yeah, the announcement was made about 3 weeks ago. I only assumed the role on Monday of this week. So this is day 3.
Okay. Now, and you are only the second CEO in this organization since the beginning, right? I mean, they only had one before you, and that was Mr. O'Malley.
That is correct. So we had a founder, and now we have a not quite a do-over, but now I get to be the second.
Okay. So now what I want you to do is to tell me basically, because a lot of people don't know what the Kansas Leadership Center is and what it entails. Can you inform us what is the Kansas Leadership Center?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to do that. Birthed in 2007 as a result of some funding that became available when Wesley Medical Center was sold. The Kansas Health Foundation was birthed. In 2007, they decided that one of the ways that they felt we could address health disparities and social determinants of health was by building leadership capacity in Kansans to help address those particular issues. Everything from educational outcomes to maternal health, any of those things that align with social determinants of health, they were really interested in dealing with. And so Mr. O'Malley was brought on board. He and a group of researchers did a canvas of the state of Kansas to identify those things that were barriers for folks engaging in civic leadership, and came up with a framework and built out an august organization that really has an international reputation now for providing both leadership development and civic engagement opportunities for folks to make Kansas and other institutions a bigger, better place. And so excited about the mission of the Kansas Leadership Center. I think we do fantastic things, particularly as it relates to helping people understand how they can deploy themselves, how they can have confidence. To me, it's an empowerment model of giving people the confidence to go into spaces, which lots of our people have done all their lives. One of the things that I think is so fascinating about our particular framework is that it stands on the foundation that leadership is not a position, it's the work. It's getting in there, not a position, it is an activity. And so each and every person has an opportunity to lead. And not only is there an opportunity, there's a requirement, there's a necessity for us to lead. I am motivated by that particular mission because I feel like that's been the lifeblood of my African-American ancestors, who in many cases had no authority to lead anything and had to do it anyway, right? And so that really it's not always easy as an African-American woman who grew up in higher education. That's not the story that we tell. And my lived experience tells me that's the only way that people that I know, love, and trust in some cases can make progress.
Sure. Okay. Now, it's called the Kansas Leadership Center. So it's headquartered in Wichita, but I'm sure that you have activities outside and throughout the state of Kansas. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. We are headquartered here. Most of our teammates live here in Kansas or in Wichita, but we are founded to serve the entire state. And so we have faculty members and staff members who live all over the state. We don't have official offices like physical locations in other places, but we deploy everywhere. One of my colleagues left this morning going to Salina. Another person is off on their way to Garden City today. And so we are all over the state doing this work, and frankly, all over the nation and the world in some cases.
Okay. Now, so I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. basically, how many people are you in charge of, or how many people that answer to you?
Yeah. I think we are, my direct reports, there are 7, but in our organization, we have 30 that are full-time employees. And then if you add coaches and faculty, that's another 25 or so folks.
Okay. And are you free to talk about what the budget is for the organization?
I am. It's a nonprofit organization that files a 1099 like everybody else, or the documents where folks can track that. We are budgeted this year. Our goal is we have a strong growth curve that we're working on. We hope to get about a budget about $7 million this year.
Okay. And where does that funding come from primarily?
Our chief funder is the Kansas Health Foundation. We call it the gift. We get a substantial budget allocation from them of about $3 million annually. And the rest of it are funds that we raise as a result of fee for service, working with corporate clients, working with international organizations and other nonprofits. And then we take those funds and reinvest those back into the mission.
Okay. Now, your previous job before you were promoted to CEO, president and CEO, was you were the head of what, Impact?
Yeah.
What official title was?
Chief Impact Officer.
Okay. And what is the big difference between that particular job and the position of president and CEO?
Yeah, I have to say, I don't know that just yet, because right now I'm doing both, and it seems like there's a marriage. I was initially brought on board to help KLC identify ways that they could both measure and strengthen the impact they were having in different communities. And so I have, as an academic, I have a doctorate degree, and I've done significant research. Part of my role was to go in and identify what are the impacts that are being had. Are social determinants are we making progress on those things that we were funded to address? So I started building out data systems and crunching numbers and building out reports and creating systems. KLC has a nonprofit foundation, and it's a very entrepreneurial kind of startup business where for 15 years, they've been grinding on doing stuff and measuring some of it, but not in a comprehensive way that allows us to leverage and build and be bigger and better.
Okay. Now, I want to ask this before I get too far. The people you're talking about, the coaches and these other people, are these people paid or are these volunteers?
They are paid positions.
Paid positions.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We have a cadre of professional coaches that have gone through executive coaching classes and are certified. And then we have a group of faculty members, some of whom are actual faculty. Others of them are practiced executive trainers, community activists that we have that have taken advantage of many of the courses that we provide, such that now they are certified teachers and they go out and help share our framework.
Okay. Now, how do you bring in people? How do you decide who to bring in when you look for a new person as a coach or a teacher or whatever? How do you get those people involved?
Yeah, there are most often what I've observed, I don't know this to be completely true, but what I've observed is that there are folks who've come through our system who take the first level class, and then a person who might take the second level class. We start looking at people who have an affinity for the work that we're doing, and then who have a classroom, what we call a front of the room presence. Some of us are called to teach, others of us are called to coach. Those are very different skills. And one requires in front of the room experience and kind of a skill set, and others require something a little less performative and maybe even more in depth. And so we're looking for folks who've come through our building who indicate to us that, you know what, this makes sense to me. I've adopted this, I'm practicing this, I use this framework, and I'd like to do more. We are intentionally looking to make sure that our staff and particularly our teaching folks who are forward facing, are representative of the communities that we want to serve. And our most recent strategic framework that was put together under the leadership of our former interim CEO, Julia Fabrice McBride, we have centered DEI as a part of the work that we do at KLC. We don't do DEI training. That's not what we're trained to do. But we want to make sure that we have an inclusive lens so that folks who are coming in our building see folks that look like them. We also want to make sure that the teaching that we do is culturally relevant and that we can identify examples in communities for folks that look like us and folks who don't. And so that's a part of the matrix of our hiring as well.
Okay. So now you're 50. Do you have another, 15 to 20 years now for Kansas leadership? Or do you see yourself going beyond that?
You know what? I believe that God has a plan, and my job is to be obedient to his plan. And what I know for sure is that when he says stay and I stay, it works. And I know that when he says go, it works too. And so I am committed to being at KLC. I would say at least 5 years. Okay. And then we'll see what God says.
Okay. Okay. You might find yourself asking again, what do I want to do? Okay.
Who do I want to be when I grow up?
Yeah. Okay. So here's my final question to you, Mrs. Morgan. Tell me this. What do you do for relaxation? What do you do for entertainment? What do you do to relax?
Yeah, I'm learning to relax. I was an Upward Bound director for a really long time. So I had evenings and weekend work. And then a mom on top of that. So with kids, our adult children are now empty. We're empty nesting and I'm learning to figure out what to do. So I hang out with my girlfriends. Okay. I read quite a bit. I Netflix and chill. So I binge watch a lot of stuff that is, my grandma would say, is candy for the mind. And I'm an auntie, and that is the coolest thing. I have 11 nieces and nephews, 3 of which are high school juniors and heavily involved in athletics. And so I go to a lot of games and I cheer really loud and I buy gifts that their parents think are obnoxious and they shouldn't have, and feed them stuff that they're not supposed to eat, all the things that aunties do. And so that is probably my biggest is going on a date with my nephews.
And what is your favorite sport?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble because I have a baseball player nephew, a basketball player nephew, and a football player nephew. Okay. So I like all sports.
All the above. Okay.
All the above. Whatever's in season.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, ma'am, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today here on Your Urban Connection. I'm sure that a lot of people at WSU will miss you, but at the same time, I'm sure that a lot of people at Kansas Leadership Conference are going to enjoy having you. And I want to say that I've enjoyed having you as my guest this morning. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to having you back sometime in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Barfield. This has been really fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good afternoon, ma'am.
You do the same.
Okay.
That work for you?
Yes. I had no problem.
Fantastic.
No problem whatsoever. I'm just trying to, okay, here we go.